Hello Tech Pros, episode 227. Welcome to the podcast where every day of the week we publish another conversation exploring the anxieties, challenges, and opportunities that technical professionals and entrepreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. There are a lot of shows that focus on the nuts and bolts of technology, but this podcast is not one of them. This is about the people behind the tech industry and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com, and I invite you to read my personal story of overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello Tech Pros, this is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to be here on episode number 1 of our new series on Leadership Wednesdays on the 5 dysfunctions of a software development team. I'll tell you all about it in just a moment, but first, a little recap on some of the other series that we've had on the show. If you're a new listener or if you've just subscribed recently, maybe you've missed some of the other multi-part series that we've had on the show. So here's a quick recap. First, we had the 9 critical attributes for assessing personal performance. So that's if you are trying to, really assess where you are at in your career, not just on the technical attributes, but on the personal attributes, those soft skills and those leadership skills and the things other than writing the code or the things other than building the servers. Those 9 critical attributes that I've come up with for assessing your personal performance. Or if you're a manager or a team lead, you can use these 9 critical attributes to assess the personal performance of the team members that you're doing performance reviews on, right? So again, it's not just like, oh, is your code good? Or, oh, is your product crashing or not? It's really talking about the leadership and the people skills and the integrity and all of the other attributes that are so important. And I break those down one by one to the how to measure them, what we're looking for, and how to measure them on a level by level basis for different careers. So you can get access to that series, the 9 critical attributes for assessing personal performance, by visiting hellotechpros.com/performance. That's hellotechpros.com/performance. The second series that we've had, not on Leadership Wednesdays, but just an entire week, a 7-day course that we had to help you build your career in the tech industry. I call it the Career Hyperdrive course because I'm a really, really big Star Wars nerd. If you don't know me already, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And so there's a lot of Star Wars references in this course, a 7-day course to help you make your career get that jump to light speed, where it's if your career is floating in space, dead in space, get that hyperdrive fixed and make that career jump to hyperspace, make the jump to hyperspace. You can find that series at hellotechpros.com/career. And then for those of you who are having a great career or a not so great career, either way, but you want to start your own business and you've thought about maybe it's a blog, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's software as a service, maybe it's an app, maybe it's a something, I don't know, but maybe I'm doing some side hustle work. I want to start my own business. Dude, I feel you. I have a lot of respect for the entrepreneurs out there who are in the process of trying to get their apps and their services and their products launched and off the ground. And I've got some help for you, and that is my Start Your First Business course. A lot of entrepreneurs listen into this podcast, and so these are the 7 major aspects to starting your first business that have really helped me get Hello Tech Pros off the ground, and I've gotten a ton of feedback from my students who have enrolled in this course. And when I say courses, guys, this stuff is absolutely free. These are just my podcast episodes that I've tied back to back as free podcast content, free audio content, with some companion email courses that go along with it. Again, absolutely free. You can get access to that Start Your First Business course at hellotechpros.com/start. All right, so today's episode, we're talking about the 5 dysfunctions of a software development team. So if you haven't read the book, I highly, highly, highly recommend the book to everybody, regardless of if you're in software development, if you're in any other technical position, if you're in any sort of leadership capability across any industry. I highly recommend this book. It's not just it is nothing to do with technology. It's nothing to do with software, but it's a great, great leadership book. So when I first moved into IT leadership, if you don't know my history, I was a software developer for a long time. And I, because of my social anxieties and because of the imposter syndrome and because of just, I wanted to write code and be technical, I pushed back for a long time when requested to move into management. I said, nope, don't want to do it. When I finally did, I got some great opportunities to go to some leadership training. And one of the things my leadership team did the first year that, the first few months that I moved into that position, was we did a group book review. Now, that sounded at the time like, oh my God, what are we doing? Is this high school again? Why are we doing a book review? But it was a fantastic exercise, and I highly recommend if your team, regardless if you are a leader or not, get your team together and go through the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. It's an outstanding book, and it's a fable, right? So it is a fictional book, a fictional story with a fictional company and fictional characters inside of it, and they go through all these challenges and discovering, what's really going on in their team and why is their team broken and busted and not performing to the level of success that they want to have. And so through this fable, through this fake story that Patrick writes in this book, he's really describing these 5 attributes or these 5 dysfunctions. And the reason he talks about this 5 dysfunctions, you can look up some of his speeches and talking on YouTube. He talks about, there's many ways to run a team correctly. There's many ways for a team to perform really well. And so instead of walking through the list of the 1,000 different ways your team can perform very well, he focuses on the 5 things that can absolutely bust and break your team. So I thought it would be a really fun exercise to get my perspective on specifically software development teams and come up with my own 5 dysfunctions of a software development team. So this series that we're going to have a 5-part podcast series. This is episode number 1. So I invite you to come back next week and the week after and the week after that every Wednesday to get access to this entire series. And today I'm going to be kicking off with the first dysfunction. The first dysfunction on my list. The very first dysfunction, first of all, the things that I'm going to be talking about in this series are from my personal experience and my experience both as an individual contributor when I was writing code, as well as a software development manager, software engineering manager. The things that I've seen that really broke the teams that I worked on or broke the teams that I was around or managing. Some of the bad things that happened that busted us. And they may be different from some of the same experiences that you've had or different experiences that you've had. You may absolutely want to call me out and say, Chad, I completely disagree. No offense, but I think you're wrong because this other thing is worse or that thing is not that bad. Great. I love it when people disagree with me. You know why? Because it challenges me to think from their perspective and to be empathetic and to learn from their experiences. So if you have different experiences than me, if you have a different perspective, if you disagree with me, I would love to talk to you about your disagreements and get your perspective. And honestly, I would love to get your voice here on the air so we can talk about it and just have a friendly discourse. And I would love to get your perspective and have you as a guest on this podcast to talk about what you think about the dysfunctions of a software development team or an engineering team or any other kind of team in technology or entrepreneurship that you want to talk about. So join me, please. Come sign up at hellotechpros.com/guest. Okay, so that's the last call to action that I'm going to have here at the beginning. hellotechpros.com/guest. Come sign up and let's talk about it on the air. So episode number 1, day number 1, the 5 dysfunctions of a software team. First, let's have a quick recap of the 5 dysfunctions that Patrick Lencioni writes in his book. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these. I'm going to quickly cover them because I don't want to spoil the whole book. It's a great book. Go check it out. Go read it. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. The first dysfunction that Patrick notes is the absence of trust. And he says that's really important because what it is, the absence of trust, as he describes, is the unwillingness to be vulnerable in the group, right? So the unwillingness to be vulnerable in the group. And he says that vulnerability is absolutely critical in bringing the team together. If no one is vulnerable and no one is saying, hey, I don't know the answer, I need your help, I screwed up, I made a mistake, right? If we are not unwilling to do that, and if we don't have trust that the other people are going to understand and have our back and forgive us, and they're not just going to throw us under the bus, then you know what? It's really, really hard to build anything on top of the absence of trust. The second dysfunction, as Lencioni says, is the fear of conflict. And he says that seeking artificial harmony over constructive, passionate debate is really limiting what the team can do, right? So if you're seeking artificial harmony, like, hey guys, let's all just get along, instead of like being really passionate about the things that we're passionate about, that can be a huge problem. The third dysfunction on a team is the lack of commitment. So when people feign buy-in and they just say, yeah, sure, sounds good, Pat, whatever you say, man, I got your back. I totally am up for that. Or just, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. I guess if we have to vote, whatever. I vote, I don't care. Just move on, right? That feigning the buy-in creates ambiguity throughout the organization, which means that, not everybody's aligned. And having people not aligned, meaning people are going in different directions. Either they're weighing the group down or they're opposing the group purposefully or not purposefully. But anyway, the group's not going to move as quickly. They're not going to have that momentum that they would have if everybody was really bought in to the situation. The fourth one is the avoidance of accountability. And he says that ducking responsibility to call peers out on counterproductive behavior sets low standards. And what he says by that is just like, hey, if you're not willing to say, hey, Pat, like, dude, what you did was wrong. What you're doing right now, you need to put that in check. You need to, do you realize that this is going on? Like, this is not cool. If we're not holding each other accountable, if we're not holding our boss accountable, if we're not holding ourselves accountable in each other, then you know what? It's really to the detriment of the entire org. And then his last dysfunction is the inattention to results, meaning that it's very, in some organizations, it's very ego-driven, right? People are focused on their personal success or the success of their individual, like, micro team or their vertical team or their silo, and they're not looking for the results of the overall organization. Like, hey, we are trying to build an awesome product, right? Regardless of the back end plumbing versus the front end UI, man, it's all got to work together. Or here's the business objective, the financial objectives that we're trying to reach. And sometimes that may mean, hey, I got to take one for the team and reduce my budget by 20% so this other team can use that 20% of the revenue to, do something that's really going to drive the needle of the overall organization. So again, that's just a quick recap of Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Software Team. This first dysfunction of a... Did I say Lencioni had the five dysfunctions of a software team? I just meant the five dysfunctions of a team. The first dysfunction of a software team that I'm going to talk about in this series is cowboy coding. Now, I want to say and be perfectly honest and transparent when I'm talking about all of these is because I personally have experience screwing teams up and screwing myself up and screwing my clients up with each of these. In my opinion, cowboy coding is one of the worst things that you can do on a software team. And here's why. At the end of the day, what you're doing is you're creating an undocumented mess of spaghetti code without business priority and without the rest of the team's knowledge. At the end of the day, it's harder to support. It's more costly in the long term. There are bigger security holes and there are more single points of failure than products that are built in a team. So the danger is, as a cowboy coder, that you think you are working for the forces of good because you're like, hey, I just want to make progress. All this sitting around and talking is just wasting a bunch of time, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to create results, and I'm going to show to the end users, I'm going to show to everyone that we just got to move ahead and get things done. And from an agile methodology perspective, that's fantastic. We want to have quick proof of concepts. We want to have fast iterations. We want to move quickly. We want to iterate quickly and learn from our mistakes. Those are great things to look forward to. So that doesn't mean that if you're moving quickly and you are learning from your mistakes and you're getting to proof of concepts and you're shipping code faster, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a Cowboy Coder. So what I mean by Cowboy Coder is you are going off on your own in a silo, in a vacuum. You're not communicating and you're just doing stuff. You're just writing code for the sake of writing code. The danger from a management perspective is that at first glance, if you don't know this person, or you don't know the situation, or you don't understand yet, or you don't see the perspective that I'm bringing to this conversation, at first glance, these Cowboy Coders, they look like angels sent from heaven. First of all, they're proactive. They're not waiting for you to tell them what to do. They're just jumping in and getting stuff done. They're working hard. And second of all, again, they're working hard. They're hard workers. They are not just like hanging out at the water cooler, just sitting around, drinking Mountain Dew and talking to each other and chit-chatting and just kind of waiting for a meeting for somebody to tell them what to do or to prioritize. They're going out. They're being proactive. And they're hard workers. They're putting in lots of hours. Probably, in many cases, the Cowboy Coders on your team are putting in a lot more hours than the rest of the people on the team. And at the end of the day, they're making results. They're getting stuff done. They are shipping code. They have stuff to show. And that's awesome. That's great. But there's a difference between a software developer who is a great team member who is shipping code and being proactive and is a hard worker and puts in hours when they need to, and a Cowboy Coder who is doing all of this because they're not being a good team member. So I have said in the past, and I have heard other managers say in the past, if I had 10 more of that guy right there, I'd be doing awesome. If I had 10 more of him, not necessarily instead of the other people on the team, but in addition to the other people of the team, or if I could take that person and clone them, oh my gosh, it would be fantastic. We would be on fire. Which, yes, I agree with. You would be on fire. Your hair would be on fire. You would be putting out fires left and right. Because here's the deal. The difference between just the proactive worker who's getting things done and bringing the team together to discuss, hey, what's the priority and what do we need to get done? The Cowboy Coder is not communicating. They're not talking to anyone. They're not talking to the business users. They're not talking to the other team members. They're not talking to management. They're just assuming that they have the answer. And many times they're assuming that they have the answer before they ask the questions or before they even know what the questions are. They just kind of hear a high level, this is where we're going, this is kind of what we're working on, this is the domain. And the Cowboy Coder says, oh, I got it. Boom. I'm start pounding out code, just pounding out code without thinking through all of the variables, without thinking through the entire situation, without asking, okay, let me understand this. Like, let's dive in deep so I can really appreciate what's going on here. The Cowboy Coder is just listening to the high level topic and making a lot of assumptions and writing code based off of those assumptions. And that's so dangerous because when you assume, guess what? You know what happens. Mistakes get made. We'll just say that. Things get dropped, mistakes get made because some of your assumptions are probably wrong. Some of your rock star Cowboy Coders assumptions are probably wrong. The other thing that fails to happen is when they're not communicating with the rest of the team, that all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where there's not standards being followed. There's nothing documented. There's nobody else who can cover and know what's going on in this code. And yeah, we might have something at the end of the day that we can quote unquote ship faster, or at least ship to a testable state faster. But that doesn't mean necessarily that we have a supportable application, a supportable code base that everybody on the team is aware of, right? We see these check-ins in our code repositories, and we're like, whoa, what happened at 3 o'clock in the morning? Where did all of this stuff come from? How come everything's busted and broke? Like the integrations between these systems are now broken. What happened? Well, it's because Cowboy Coder over there went off and did a whole bunch of stuff without talking to people. So it's a bad thing. I'm just going to call it out right now. I have been a Cowboy Coder in the past, and I did a lot of bad things. Trying to do good things, right? Again, it's not because folks are evil. It's not because people are trying to do bad things, because people are trying to do good things, but their good intentions are being delivered with a bad methodology. Great intentions are being counterminded or counterproductive because of a bad implementation. A Cowboy Coder needs to be checked by somebody, either other team members or the customer or the manager. Somebody needs to check the Cowboy Coder and say, hang on, time out, slow down, Sparky. You have to slow down. It's not about shipping that fast. It's first about, let's all get clear on the business objectives. And I want to have a lot of communication here so that I understand that you understand all of the variables going on, and that all of the priorities going on, and all of the integrations going on. So don't just run off and try to handle it all yourself. Let's discuss it first. I know you hate discussing it, and you want to just start, whipping out your favorite IDE and start cranking out code. I respect that, but let's really get clear on what the priorities, what all of the requirements are. Let's make really, really sure that we understand what we're doing. So in just a moment, we'll talk about why people fall into this trap, why Cowboy Coders are created, what creates a Cowboy Coder, and how to avoid that. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but first we'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Is your website ugly? I mean, really ugly? Did your website fall out of the ugly source code repo and hit every branch on the way down? Is your website so ugly that Apple won't display it in Safari due to their human interface guidelines? Is your website so ugly that your CSS has no style? Is your website so ugly that even your mama won't bookmark it? I know a lot about ugly websites because, sadly, I've been building them my entire career. I've always made excuses like, it should be the functionality over the design. But what I should have been saying all along is, look, I'm colorblind, I'm style challenged, and I have no business building web front ends whatsoever. Luckily, I've worked with some amazing designers that have helped turn my MVP OS, or minimum viable piece of into websites that real humans want to use. And it's not just about complementary colors and rad logo designs. It's about connecting with your website visitors on an emotional level that engages the stickiness centers in their brain and makes them more curious to read about your products and then follow your call to actions. I invite you to check out the awesome tips that website designer Veronica Curran gave me for the Hello Tech Pros website and get your free personalized website makeover consultation video by visiting HelloUglySite.com. Hello Ugly Site is definitely ugly, but your website doesn't have to be. Go to HelloUglySite.com. That's HelloUglySite.com. Since publishing episode 141 on how social anxiety disorder and depression nearly cost me my life, I've gotten tons of feedback from people who are struggling with similar issues. Anxiety is a big deal. In my opinion, it's not discussed enough, especially in the tech industry, where a lot of us hide from our anxieties behind the computer screen instead of learning how to address them. That's why I started writing a book on the subject. If you are struggling with anxiety or know someone who is, please visit anxietynerd.com. You can sign up to read Chapter 1 for free, as well as receive regular progress details so that you can hold me accountable to get this book published. anxietynerd.com. Okay, we're back with our first dysfunction of a software team, And the first dysfunction that we're talking about today is cowboy coding and how dangerous it is to have cowboy coders on your software team. If you are a solopreneur, if you are a startup founder and you are the sole coder on your team, or if there's just one or two people on your team that's writing code and solving problems, that's different, right? I'm talking about an organization where we need to be working together as a team. We have a software team, not just a software individual or a software couple of people working on independent things that don't have anything to do with each other or aren't integrated. I'm talking about a software development team where we're building a product together and we need to all come together and solve this problem using really group thoughts, right? So the Cowboy Coder is trying to solve problems from a perspective of being productive and doing things well, doing things good, and just getting started, and not necessarily needing to understand all the answers. First of all, there's a lot of ego. This is an ego-driven situation because the Cowboy Coder feels like, hey, I get it. I understand it. You don't understand how much I understand. I am really, really, really smart. Cowboy Coders, I would say at least 90% of Cowboy Coders feel like they're in the top 5% of their craft, right? They think they're really, really, really good. And maybe they are. Maybe they're fantastic. Maybe they're brilliant. But I promise you that your Cowboy Coder is not as good as the entire team if the entire team was operating at a high functioning capacity. If everybody was meshed together and used their strengths to help each other's weaknesses and balanced out their weakness by somebody else's strength and communicated well and really understood like what the business objectives are and were helping each other out to like continually improve not just the product but the team process, and not just the team process but the individuals on the team. If we're all working together with those things in mind, and then that team is going to be better than any Cowboy Coder that you can bring in. Second of all, things of value, really, really big things of value, was not developed by an individual. And I know, I absolutely can hear the shouts of frustration from the audience, right? I know people are saying, what about Linus, right? What about Torvalds? What about whoever, XYZ? Name your developer champion of choice who is a master of their craft and the inventor of all things on the interwebs that we use, right? Name your most awesome person that you can ever think of and say, what about them? That happens. Absolutely, that happens. And I guarantee you there's a lot of ego with those individuals too, a lot of those individuals. But things of value in most organizations are not created by just an individual. If they are, then what is that individual doing working on that team? Why is that individual not just working at home by themselves, building this thing, and then shipping it to the world and having the world pay them $1 billion to use it? Okay, so if you're working on a team, if you are a team member or if you are a team leader that has a group together that should be working on things, we gotta watch out for these Cowboy Coders that are just absolutely trying to go off on their own and do everything by themselves because either they think the team's not making progress and they need to show progress, or worse, they're ego-driven and they think that they're better than everybody else. Another potential Cowboy Coder sees the rest of the team as competitors. They see it as, you know what, there's a finite amount of money that this company can give out to its employees. There's a finite amount of bonuses that can be rewarded. There's a finite number of senior level positions or architect level positions or whatever those next promotions are in the organization. And by golly, I want to get it. And for me to get it, that means I have to outshine everybody else in the organization. And for me to outshine everybody else in the organization means I'm going to keep my work a secret. I'm going to crank it out. I'm going to work on it in a vacuum, and I'm going to try to impress my boss, and I'm going to try to impress my customers and make them happy. And sorry, but screw the rest of the team. They are my competition, and I'm going to beat them. Listen, that's a horrible way to do business. I feel that is a very limiting belief set. If you think that there are just X number of dollars in the world or X number of raises or promotions available in the world, and that you have to compete to the detriment of the rest of the team, you have to compete to the detriment of the overall organization because you're looking out for number one, you're not looking out for the overall team, that's a bad place to be. In my personal opinion, there's enough money to go around. There's enough promotions and raises to go around. Maybe not at this company that you're in. If there's only a team of 10 people and only one of them can be the leader, you know what? Only one of them is going to be the leader. But again, if we are looking out for the overall business objectives, the overall objectives of our customers, and the overall just doing the right thing and getting things done, then it is absolutely not an internal competition. It should be about the internal collaboration to meet those objectives, because I believe that when we do better, when we work together to a higher state, what am I trying to say? We can do better things together than we can apart. That's what I'm trying to say. And 1 + 1 sometimes doesn't equal 2. Sometimes 1 + 1 equals 10. When we kind of multiply, man, I suck at math and I suck at explaining this point. So I've probably lost some people on this point. But when we work together as a team, we're going to outperform that individual contributor, no matter how good of a job that individual person does. There's a lot of money out there. It's not a competition. We can work together and we can create greater rewards for the overall company, right? We can together work to make sure that the bonuses are not just at X number, right? But it's X plus X plus X. We can increase the bonus pool by working together. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Every situation is different, but this cowboy coding is very dangerous, and I challenge you to stamp it out wherever you see it. I have been a victim of seeing the benefits of cowboy coding, and I have excused cowboy coding because I wanted to see progress, and I have used some things as an excuse to be a cowboy coder myself. But in the long term, in the short term, it looks fine and it feels fine and it feels great because we're getting stuff done. But in the long term, you're really hurting the rest of the team. Speaking of the rest of the team, the other thing that happens is when a person has this superhero syndrome, when they feel like they need to prove themselves to the boss or prove themselves to the customer, or prove themselves to the other team, and they're in this competitive state that they really need to get out and outshine everyone, there's something that happens to the rest of the team. And individual team members are going to respond in a couple of different ways. Some team members are going to compete them head on. And they're going to say, buddy, listen, you think you're doing it your way? Well, I'm doing it my way. And then they're going to start this game of one-upmanship, where now you've got two cowboy coders and they're trying to outdo each other. And they competing for each other's attention or the boss's attention or whoever. They're going to be so worried about the competition between each other, then they are going to take their eye off the prize. They're going to take their eye off of the end goal of what we're trying to build here for the customer or for the organization. They're going to end up rolling over each other's code check-ins. They're going to be doing things that countermine each other's code. They're going to start a lot of flame wars in the organization. They're going to start a lot of bad behavior in the organization, and it's just going to turn nasty and ugly. A lot of conflict that doesn't need to be there. So that's one type of response. Another type of response that I've seen a lot is people just kind of roll over. So when you get this superhero cowboy coder that comes in and he or she's just trying to be a rock star that's just dominating everything, and they're working till 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're getting there at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're just cranking out all kinds of code, they're not documenting anything, they're not explaining anything, they're just doing it all. There's a number of people that are just going to say, whatever. They're going to throw their hands up in the air and be like, hey, does it really matter if I work today or not, does it? It doesn't matter if I put in any effort or not, because you know what? so-and-so is going to roll over my code at 3 o'clock in the morning when he decides that he has a personal preference against my coding style, and he's going to refactor it. He's going to rewrite it. So why not just kind of stub things out and let it go? Sooner or later, that person's going to be that superhero that runs in and saves the day and wants to get all the accolades. By golly, he can have it. And these individuals, unfortunately, are falling into a trap of being completely unproductive because they just kind of give up hope. They don't feel like they have anything to add to the organization anymore, either because, excuse me, the Cowboy Coder is just going to smash it all over them and trash their product, or because the manager is so in awe of what's going on with the productivity of this individual that they're going to put this Cowboy Coder up on a pillar and shine a spotlight on them and say, oh my gosh, everyone bow down and worship the all-knowing, all-producing Cowboy Coder. He is awesome. He is amazing. He is worshipped, and he's going to get all the accolades. Again, the rest of the team is going to be like, well, what's in it for me? Sounds like nothing, because my boss is already sold on this individual being the hero. So there's not a whole lot for me to do. So again, in my opinion, this is the first dysfunction of a software team, Cowboy Coding. I've done it in the past. I've led them in the past, and I have seen the detriment that when allowed to go so far, it can absolutely destroy the culture of a team. It can destroy the productivity of a team, and it can really undermine a lot of great things that you want to be doing as a whole software team. Again, there's some great attributes that individuals can show. We want to show proactiveness. We want to show just a high level of energy. We want to show commitment. We want to show that we're in it to win it. But we want to do that with communication. We want to do that with documentation. We want to do that by asking questions. We want to do that without ego. We want to do that with just inviting people to come in and check and balance and say, hey, before I write any code, this is my plan. Anybody see any flaws here? What am I missing? Right? We want to just have a little bit of communication to spread the word, spread the knowledge of what's going on. If that Cowboy Coder gets hit by a bus or wins the lottery or just gets burned out, because I've seen all three of those happen, it's a bad thing. The rest of the team's going to be sitting there holding the bag going, I literally have no idea what this individual was doing for the last 6 months. They were off on their own. They would never come out and answer. When they did, it was like, oh, I don't have time to answer your questions because I'm too busy saving the world. And we don't know how to support it. And it's going to take a long time for people to get up to speed. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to be Cowboy Coders, and we don't want to have Cowboy Coders on the team. We want to squash that. Instead, talk before you code. Ask questions. Most importantly, when you ask questions, listen. Or when other people come up, but if you're not asking questions, if they're trying to give advice, please be empathetic, be open-minded, and listen. And challenge your own assumptions, and challenge the assumptions. If you're a leader, challenge the assumptions of the developers on your team, and make sure that they're not Cowboy Coding. Next week, we're going to continue this series. We've got 4 more weeks back to back to back. Every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about the 5 dysfunctions of a software team. Next week, we're going to be talking about the dysfunction that creates inferior solutions that are driven by 1/4 of the team. So today's episode, we've been talking about the solutions that are generating spaghetti code without business priority by the one individual on the team, or the individuals as individuals not working together as a team. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the 1/4 of the team that are building inferior solutions that are not bringing in the rest of the team. We'll talk about that next week. And tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Tech Thursday, so come back tomorrow as well. You've been listening to Chad Bostic, and I'll see you next week. See you tomorrow. Take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/227. Do you use Slack for team communication? join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Leadership Wednesday, but tomorrow, my featured guest and I talk about technology. On Friday, people and communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. And then next week, we kick it off with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity. And then we're back again on Wednesday to discuss leadership. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.